Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets, and I have David Schmidt, who's the inventor of LifeWave technology and founder and CEO of LifeWave. We're going to be talking about how LifeWave can, help you during these time frames. We're going to talk about the vaccination and some of the problems with the vaccination, and on the bright side, some things you actually can do if you've been vaccinated or around people that have been vaccinated. So globally, David is the founder of 94 patents, 13 pending, and many more being written. So one of the great things that I enjoy about David, and one of the things that attracted me to David's work, was that he helped the Navy SEAL teams many decades ago, and it helped some of those guys. And I'd heard about that the technology that he utilized for those guys, and then someone showed me that, and it's like it's available for everyone. That's what basically got me into working with David, and it's been a pleasure, David. Thanks so much for everything that you do.
Oh, Michael, the pleasure's mine. And, I have an enormous sense of gratitude for the life that we live here in the United States and the sacrifices that our incredible men and women in service provide so that we can enjoy freedom. And so thank you for everything that you've done so that we can enjoy freedom here in the US.
It's very nice. Thank you very much. And you're also we're looking at the Navy SEAL Foundation. You wanted to see if there's anything you could do to contribute, and we made contact with them, and you're going to do a call with them pretty soon, and maybe and I think that's not a maybe, that's pretty much a guarantee that they're going to be very intrigued, and we want to use the technology, or you're gifting some of this technology that the Navy SEAL teams can use, the families, guys that are retired and so forth, that have different problems, and that's very generous of you. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. A number of years ago, we made a large donation to the Military Order of the Purple Heart. We had an outreach program to donate our product to men and women that had been injured in the line of duty, and were having a problem with pain or having a problem sleeping. So we had 1,000 families that we donated products to, so they didn't have to pay for the product, and we did that over a period of a few years. So I enjoyed doing that, and looking forward to doing something with the SEAL vets.
Yeah, that's great, because I can tell you from my own experience, using the product, that I've had incredible benefit, and I think those guys are going to appreciate it very much. Thanks.
Yep, thank you.
So let's talk about, I've seen a webinar that you did, and we've kind of talked a little bit offline, some of the things that the vaccine, there's problems with the vaccination. Let's kind of jump in a little bit about that. I know you've been involved in some studies, some amazing studies. In fact, it seems like a lot of suppression that goes on out there. So we can, first of all, neither one of us are doctors. So always, use your own best judgment, contact your own doctor for information and so forth. But what have you learned as far as the vaccination complications that may have happened or possibly happened? We just saw one of the NFL players, pretty much drop dead on the field, and he was helped. And the only thing that's different is that he got vaccinated, and a lot of those guys, almost all those guys, have been vaccinated. We've been seeing. I think Dr. McCullough came on Tucker Carlson. He talked about that it was 1,598. He even had the very numbers of professional athletes that have dropped dead, and usually that's 29 a year. So that's a massive increase, and the only thing that's different would be the vaccination. So seems to be some problems out there. What have you found, David?
Yeah, so some background on this. So I'm the CEO and founder of LifeWave, and we have health technology and general wellness products. And our products are based on phototherapy and photobiomodulation. So what that means is that what we want to do is trigger biochemical changes in the body with light. And early on in the pandemic, there were a number of things that just didn't add up. And so as a company, we've done over 80 clinical studies over the past 20 years. So there's a network of scientists and doctors that we do studies with. And I thought, we need to be able to study COVID-19. We need to be able to understand it. And then later on, I wanted to do a study on the vaccine. And the initial objective was to find out people that have been vaccinated, can they use our products? Are there going to be any adverse events? So if we got a call into our customer service, we needed data to say, yes, if you've been vaccinated, you can use our products and, there's no issue. And as a result, we found some things that were alarming. So back to give a little bit of history behind this, when COVID-19 we first became aware of it globally, and it was eventually declared a pandemic in March of 2020. It was announced that clinical studies on a vaccine for COVID-19 were going to start. Now, to put this in perspective, in the pharmaceutical industry, it can take 20 years to develop a new drug. And so that was the first thing that didn't quite make sense. The other thing that didn't really make sense is that they were going to human studies. So to put this in perspective, if you wanted to go to the FDA and you wanted to do a drug development, you'd have to go through very long periods of time where you would do animal testing, you go through phase 1, phase 2 trials, and then eventually you could get to human trials, but only after you have determined that that new drug is safe and there is a reasonable chance that it's not going to cause undue harm to human beings. So that whole process was short-circuited. 6 weeks after the pandemic, and this is all in public record now, 6 weeks after the pandemic was announced, vaccine clinical trials on human beings started. So the obvious questions come up. In a 6-week period of time, how was a vaccine developed? How did they get FDA approval for doing these studies? And why were they allowed to test directly a new drug on human beings? That it was totally done with new technology. Nobody knows if it's safe, and nobody knows what the effects are going to be. So this raised all kinds of red flags with me as a researcher. I'm an inventor and I've been in product development my entire life. So there are all kinds of red flags here. Another very significant red flag happened in May of 2021. And what happened then was a clinical study came out on an amino acid called N-acetylcysteine, or NAC. And when you take NAC or you take cysteine, and this is naturally found in milk products and whey protein and eggs, it elevates the body's master antioxidant called glutathione. So for people that aren't aware of what glutathione is, it's an antioxidant that's found throughout the body. It's found in nearly every cell. It helps to control inflammation, and our lifespan is directly correlated to our body's levels of glutathione. So if you have somebody that lives to be over 100 years old, they have elevated levels of glutathione. Another thing about glutathione, and there's tens of thousands of studies that have been done on this over the past few decades. Another thing about glutathione is that it inhibits damage to the DNA. So if the DNA is damaged and you have elevated levels of glutathione, glutathione will actually repair the DNA before the cell divides and creates a new cell. So obviously this can help to prevent things like cancer and other types of mutations. So what was alarming was that when this study came out in May of 2021, about 5 weeks later, the FDA issued a letter to manufacturers of NAC telling them they should take it off the market. And so we saw NAC start to disappear as a supplement from Amazon and Sprouts and Whole Foods and those type of places. So that was another very significant red flag. So I spoke to our group of scientists and medical doctors and decided we need to investigate this. And and find out what's really going on. So one of the studies that we did before the vaccine was released was with copper supplementation. So we got a group of healthcare workers that were working in a hospital in New York. And we gave them 2.5 milligrams of copper glycinate. And copper is a very strong antiviral. And it will naturally occur in the human body, but most people don't get enough copper in their diet. You find it in liver, for example, wheatgrass, and in chocolate, and dark chocolate. But most people don't get enough in their diet. And anyway, we gave people this supplement, and we found out that it inhibited the virus, and there was a much lower incidence of people getting COVID-19 when they had the copper supplement.
Wow.
So that told us that there could be natural materials like NaC, copper, and iodine that you could take as a supplement, and vitamin D, and dramatically reduce your risks of getting COVID or having a severe reaction if you did get it. Mm-hmm. The next two studies that we did were with Dr. Brian Daly, who is a medical doctor. He's a forensic medical specialist, and he also does work for the Department of the Navy. And what we did with Dr. Daly is we did two studies, and I have some slides that I can show you. We did two studies with 75 people, and essentially what we found is that 4 months after people received either the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine, so the mRNA vaccines, they had disturbing changes in their blood. So, for example, there was elevated white blood cell count, indicating there was an ongoing infection. There was mutation of the white blood cells. There was clumping of the white blood cells, meaning there's increased risk for heart attack and stroke. And these mRNA vaccines are not behaving at all like vaccines. So that's a mouthful. I should stop.
So now that's good, because Dr. Robert Malone, he claims he's developed the mRNA vaccine, and he came out, he got vaccinated, and he had severe complications from it. I believe his heart, had some problems with his heart and so forth. So he's come out and against the vaccinations, and he's gotten a lot of pushback. So that mRNA technology is basically, it seems to be, there was probably some thought that it could help the cells in resisting, disease and viruses and so forth. But like we're talking about, it seems to mutate the cells in a negative way.
Yeah, what we were told was that when you got injected with the mRNA vaccine, that it was localized and it would stay, let's say, in the shoulder or the arm. And that's just not true. Subsequent studies now have proven that the mRNA vaccine is showing up throughout the body. Another thing that's really alarming, this is some new studies that have come out, is that mRNA is finding its way into sperm. So let's say that you had a man that was vaccinated, but the wife chose not to. She's going to end up getting the mRNA into her body. If they have unprotected sex, or they're trying to have a child, or what have you. And then, of course, there's the phenomena of viral shedding, meaning that a person may be able to get someone that's dating, may be able to transfer the mRNA from one individual to another through kissing, right? That is a concern now. And so there's this concept that kind of like you're getting vaccinated unwillingly. Yeah.
So there's different, like you're talking about, there's different ways you can help yourself. You're talking about the copper, take the copper supplement, glutathione, NaC, if you can find. It's hard to find. I was like an early proponent of NaC as well. but they were taking it off. I taught people how to make their own hydroxychloroquine. That got taken off. I moved to ivermectin. I got taken down for promoting ivermectin. So we've seen some other people that have promoted it or talked about it, and they got a lot of pushback. So like you're talking about, there seems to be a pushback so that people can't help themselves and protect themselves.
Yeah, so I suppose this is the good news. We should show people, what they're dealing with and what's really alarming about this. So I'd like to share some slides with you eventually. But the good news is that, yes, there are a number of things that people can do. So NAC would certainly be one thing. And so elevating glutathione is going to help to manage the inflammatory process. And so this is particularly important when we're looking at potential problems to the cardiovascular system. What we saw in our study is that there was elevated levels of fibrinogen. There may be cases where there's elevated levels of homocysteine, which is indicated in cardiovascular disease. It would increase a person's risk of stroke and heart attack. Vitamin D is an interesting one from the perspective of protecting against COVID-19 itself, in that people that are taking, let's say, 5,000 IUs of vitamin D per day, the benefit of this is that vitamin D not only improves the function of the immune system, but it also surrounds the virus and makes it more difficult for the virus to replicate. And vitamin D can act as an anti-inflammatory. So for people that have been vaccinated or people that are concerned about the viral infection, then vitamin D would be a good one. We found, of course, in our study that copper glycinate works extremely well as an antiviral. Iodine, it works incredibly well and is relatively easy to get. And is very effective against COVID-19. However, for the mRNA vaccine, which is something that we should be concerned about, what appears to be going on here is that, this is not really, to call this a vaccine is probably incorrect. It really looks like it's functioning more as something that modifies gene expression. And we have some evidence of that relative to these cell mutations that we've seen. So compounds that can have a positive effect on gene expression would be things like olive oil, resveratrol, and copper peptide. Copper peptide by far is the most powerful. It will reset about 1/3 of the human genome to a more youthful state. But extra virgin olive oil, 1 or 2 tablespoons a day, that can have not only a favorable effect on gene expression, improves longevity, but also the monounsaturated fats in olive oil have a regulatory effect on inflammation, so it can help with the inflammatory process. So these are all things that are readily available. Right. There certainly are other very powerful compounds for dealing with COVID-19.
So the fibrogen is basically produced by the liver. Is that correct? When there's a viral load that comes into the body, or some kind of cancers or anything like that. I saw a show where you're talking to the gentleman. You're talking about the fibrogen that seems to be showing up in a lot of people, and that's what's causing the heart problem and so forth. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with the liver overproducing the fibrogen?
Yeah, if it's okay, let me share some of these slides with you, and we can kind of talk through that. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. So we did 2 studies, and this was with both dark field and bright field microscopy. And these are techniques that, allow us to image white blood cells, red blood cells, and see what's really going on here. So the image on the left under normal cells, this would be this is what we would expect to see in a healthy sample. And in an unhealthy sample, it would be the image on the right. So you see the blood cells clumping together. And this could be from dehydration, improper nutrition, age, could be from a medical condition, someone that's a heavy smoker. You might see blood cells starting to clump together like this. And when that happens, the cells can't do what they're supposed to. They can't deliver oxygen from one part of the body to the other. And now the blood levels of oxygen go down. And so it's a very, very significant problem. So what we saw in the study was that in every single person that had been vaccinated, we saw this clumping effect. It's called RULU. And I'm going to have some other slides where we show it in even greater detail. But that's probably the first thing that we noticed, was that the red blood cells were clumping together. So that means that the ability of the body to deliver oxygen to cells is diminished. And that is incredibly important. So one of the things we know about people that have been vaccinated now is they have a higher risk of cancer. And cancer cells thrive in an environment without oxygen. It's called anaerobic metabolism. And that's why oxygen therapies have been so successful in treating cancer. Well, if you deliver a vaccine that reduces the capacity of the body to transport oxygen, you're going to get an increased risk of cancer. I'll skip ahead here a little bit. And this was, to me, the most alarming thing that we saw.
Definitely. Was
the change in shape of the white blood cells. So what you can see in this one sample, up on the right, we have, of course, the normal shape that's shown in the image kind of in the center top. And then we saw a significant number of cells that had changed shape. And Dr. Daly had said he was unaware of anything that could cause this. So in his career as a medical doctor, which spans over 30 years now, he had never seen this phenomena before. And, he didn't know, as a forensic medical specialist, what these tail-like structures were, or, in one case on this slide, and we had seen it in other places, the white blood cells not only grew tails, but also grew horns. And that's in the upper right. So in biology, form and function go together. So whenever you're changing the structure and the form of something, you're going to dramatically change its function. So that means that the immune system here has been compromised. It can't do its job. And this is going to increase the risk of a person developing other types of disease.
Wow. Those little devils. Now, do you think that they're actually, those horns, maybe there's, we've heard about transmissions from 5G, maybe affecting the cells and stuff like that. You think there's any kind of linkage to that? Maybe they're forming that so they can have communication. What is it? Just a mutation that's just no one really knows anything about that yet?
Someone knows something about it, because when a drug company develops a new drug, they're going to do these same types of tests. So they would have made these observations and studied them. And what's pretty shocking is that the FDA would have allowed the mRNA vaccines on the market, knowing that they cause these kinds of side effects and we're having these kind of effects. So you raise a really interesting point. There is a phenomenon in biology. There was a entomologist, Dr. Phil Callahan. He passed away a few years ago. He was in his 90s. And he probably should have won a Nobel Prize for some of his discoveries. But one of the things that he had figured out was how insects were using infrared communication based on antenna structures. And so, to your point, I think it would be a feasible hypothesis to state that the horns or the tails could be a communication structure. We just simply don't know. But as a hypothesis, you could say, okay, that's reasonable. It would be worth investigating.
Very good, very good. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. The ants, like you're talking about, anyone that's ever, had a bunch of ants on them and then they get bit by one of them, they all seem to know right away, and they all bite you all at once. If you have a bunch of ants on you, didn't realize it. So there is a certain communication that goes on that, many of us don't know it, don't see it. But science, like your excellent science, is describing a lot of this information. You're like the special forces guy in the science field. I love it.
That's quite a compliment.
We think outside the box, and you're definitely that type of guy. So kudos to you for your work.
Thank you. Yeah, and there's an up close image of this, and so this is really alarming stuff. So anyone that has been vaccinated should be speaking with a medical doctor, a healthcare practitioner, and looking at some of these options to clean up their blood. So things like IVs of vitamin C, IVs of glutathione, ozone therapy, taking some of these supplements regularly that we've talked about to help to manage the inflammation, get the number of white blood cells down, and protect themselves from some of the really alarming things that we're seeing now in terms of increased risk of heart disease and cancer.
Yeah, that's great. And you're doing the work with the copper peptides. It's an X39, X49. So that is having a direct effect on the inflammation that comes with the fibrogens and so forth. So what can you tell us about the copper peptides and how that's possibly helping? I think you've done some research on that.
Yeah, we have. So what we did, I'm not going to make any product claims here. So what I'll say is we administered copper peptide, which is a naturally occurring peptide in the body. So as people age, their levels of copper peptide decline. So first thing is I would definitely recommend people take a copper peptide supplement, something like 2.5 milligrams of copper glycinate. If foods that are rich in copper would be things like liver, chocolate, wheatgrass, but I'd still recommend a supplement. And so copper peptide is made in the body naturally, but if someone's been vaccinated, they may want to speak with their doctor about getting 4 to 6 weeks of injections of copper peptide, because what we found was that it was able to reverse the symptoms from the mRNA vaccines. So what that means is that we saw over a period of 4 to 6 weeks that the white blood cell count started to come down, go back into normal range. We saw these mutations go away, and we saw the level of fibrinogen go back into normal range as well. So copper peptide will function as an antioxidant, but there's reason to believe that there was more there than it's being an antioxidant. We think it's because copper peptide is a very powerful gene modulator, and it is reversing the effects of the mRNA. That's a hypothesis, but it fits with the observation.
Very nice. And I know the early on in the game where the Chinese and then eventually the French did studies on IVs of high doses of vitamin C, and that was basically helping and turning around the people that had severe effects of COVID. So now we're talking about people that are unfortunately having severe effects from the vaccination, turning that around with the copper peptide. Very nice.
Yeah, and what's kind of amusing is the FDA's position on all of this. We all know what their position was on ivermectin. And, recently, a few weeks ago, it was reported that the FDA now is saying, well, we never told people they couldn't take ivermectin. But yeah, the history of this is, incredible. I'm not a I'm not a drug guy, right? I develop natural products, but as a drug, ivermectin is unbelievably safe. It has a huge history of use. I believe a Nobel Prize was awarded for its development,
Mm.
and the FDA treated it as unsafe and unfit for use, and the data just never supported that. So I agree with you completely that ivermectin should be available to everyone that wants to use it as a first line of defense against COVID.
Yeah, and Joe Rogan came out, he'd utilized it, and it seemed to have helped him, and he got really hammered for bringing that out. And there was a province, case in point, there was a province in India that gave ivermectin out to all of its residents, and they had a very, very low case of problematic COVID infections. So it definitely does have an effect.
Right. And, in that study too, it may have been another one, but in India, they also did a study with the combination of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine,
Hmm.
and found it incredibly effective
Oh.
at treating COVID-19. So we know these things exist. My medical doctor here in Florida was having incredible success with giving his patients IVs of vitamin C and Z-Pak and ivermectin, and he was saying, yeah, it's no big deal. They're doing fine.
Mhm. Yeah, and on top of that, once you have been exposed, which pretty much I think everybody has at this point,
Right.
you've been exposed to COVID, you're going to build up an immune resistance to it at that point. And there's been evidence, lots of studies so far, probably a lot more than we were being exposed to or allowed to come through, where they're saying that people that have been exposed are better off than people that actually get the vaccination. So they built the natural immunity is far more effective, because they said that if you get the COVID shot, you're not going to get COVID, you're not going to get sick, and that's not been the case. People have been, and we get Joe Biden. It's a great example. I think he's had 2 or 3 times where he's gotten COVID. He's the one that said, go get the vaccination. So
Right.
lots of Hollywood types and, have pushed it and so forth. And they're same thing, getting sick all the time. So yeah, it's definitely the natural form. And I promoted that early on. I said very early on, I was looking at the problems coming out of China, because I'm a bio guy from the SEAL teams and the CIA. We're always watching for that, and we felt that was going to be the next thing. And then when I saw China early on, like in December, I started to see the problems. In early January, I was like, hammering it, like this is going to come. And I said, Wuhan, and it got channels taken down. But yeah, now they say it, openly. So what are they going to say openly in another year from now? Yeah, the clutch shot was probably not good for everybody.
Yeah, and of course, the laws are structured that the pharmaceutical companies don't have any type of liability. So anyone that had an adverse event, anyone that died from getting the mRNA vaccine, the families don't have any kind of recourse against big pharma, which is, probably something else that's fairly alarming. The emergency use authorization is also alarming, because it's a way to circumvent the normal drug approval process. So the FDA they don't have any liability either. They can just say, well, it was a global pandemic, it was an emergency, and we got something to market quickly to help people. And, we didn't have the data to see that it was harmful. So, it's not our fault. And so this is, I think, a very significant flaw in the system. There's too much money at stake, too many interests, too many political motivations here to get these things out to market as a method of control and making money. And we really saw this by the disinformation campaign of banning things like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, when in fact these drugs are very efficacious and very cheap and very safe.
Yeah, it's very nice. And there's the LifeWave products as well that help. You actually have a glutathione patch, that's very beneficial. And are there any other products within the LifeWave line that you would recommend to keep people healthy going forward and maybe reverse the effects of vaccination?
Yeah, so we only make general wellness claims. So that's why we're referred to supplements. But in terms of general wellness products, 2 or 3 of the products I'd recommend for people would be X39, which elevates copper peptide, or Eon patch, which is a general anti-inflammatory, and glutathione. So the combination of these will support the immune system, help to manage inflammation, and then have a whole host of benefits such as detoxification, improvement in the quality of the sleep, and also supports wound healing and stem cell activity. So people that use these on a regular basis are going to feel a significant improvement in their health. And of course, if we support our health, that makes us less likely to experience serious adverse effects from a number of different things.
Very good, very good. And we both spoken before, and we're both proponents of kind of like the intermittent fasting, where you fast a good portion of the day. A lot of people, have it reversed. I think I was you eat 16 hours a day and then you rest for 8. I flipped that. I rest everything for 16 hours a day, and then I eat for those 8 hours, for intermittently through the 8 hours too. So that seems to be helping. Of course, exercise is always good. So diet, exercise. I mean, everyone's been talking about that, but that, and plus the supplements that you brought up are excellent going forward. What do you think that going forward there could be more events like this? It seems this, as a bioweapon guy, I blew the whistle very early on in this and said this was a bioweapon. It's been pretty much proven that is the case, so they don't come right out and admit it.
Right.
Do you think there is potential going forward for something like that, and using the type of things that we recommended could prevent anything in the future?
I hate to say this because I'm an optimist, but I think COVID-19 and the mRNA vaccines were the beginning. Yeah. And we're only going to see more of this. So as an example, there was a story that was published a few months ago out of Boston University, and they were saying that they had developed a version of COVID-19 that was many times more lethal. It was like 80% lethal as compared to the one that people were exposed to, like Omicron. And that story was completely shut down. It never really made its way into mainstream. Nobody reported on it. It was the flash in the pan. And so the question was, why was Boston University engaged in gain of function research, which is banned in the United States? And it clearly was. Mm-hmm. So, if I was in the Department of Defense and I was going to face a country like China and a massive, military and a potential threat, I'd want a bioweapon to, have that in the cache. But the risks associated with it are just, far too great. And we could be looking at, extinction level events. So, this is all to say, what can the average person do? Well, the good news is an enormous amount. Stock up on things that we know are very powerful antivirals, like iodine, like hydrogen peroxide. As a matter of fact, one of the things that's been found now is that when a person first comes down with COVID-19, if you do a nasal rinse with food grade hydrogen peroxide, 1 to 2%, and iodine, like povidone, that you can completely wipe out the COVID-19 virus before it ever gets started. So, this would be something, if I wasn't working in the field, I would study as much as I could, stock up on natural antivirals, and be prepared that, when the next thing does come around, you can say, okay, I don't need to panic. I've got, food, shelter, clothing, all of that. And I've got these natural antivirals, and I'm ready.
Yeah. And that's good that you just brought that up, because I had a talk with Christiane Northrup, and she brought up that specifically, the nasal rinse like that. So that's great. I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, like you said, there's many things that natural that people can do. And that's, I like to have, levels. And that's what I love about LifeWave, because it's like another level. And I think it's a very, very top level in my line of defense. But I'm not a defensive guy, I'm an offensive guy. So I'm like pushing the envelope. So, and that's definitely what you have done with your product. So yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah, and there's always as a Navy SEAL, your training is you go out in the middle of nowhere and you can make something out of nothing, right? Yeah. So you get that special type of intel. An example of this would be Department of Homeland Security uses chlorine dioxide to eradicate anthrax. Yeah. So, this is something that's made from pool cleaner and lemon juice, effectively, right? Citric acid and pool cleaner, sodium hypochlorite. So, and these are very, very commonly available. And so chlorine dioxide, which can be taken internally and it breaks down into the body as water and salt. When you put chlorine dioxide in contact with a virus, the virus explodes, it detonates. Same with things like iodine. So some of the most, powerful antivirals, which work on about everything, are very inexpensive and very safe for human consumption.
Yeah, and that so the MMS, I've used that for a long time. When I was overseas, I would use that, and everybody would get sick, and they're like, "How do you not get sick?" I was like, "I use this stuff, like you just described." Yeah. It's super easy, super effective. You just a couple drops of each. Let it sit for a few seconds or so, and then add your water and drink it, and that keeps all the bad stuff out.
Yeah, and if you know how to make it, I mean, you can travel with the powdered version of the sodium hypochlorite, like what they use as a pool cleaner. You can get lemons, or citric acid anywhere, and then you can make it in a few minutes. It's not really like I say, it's not really complicated, and incredibly effective. And it can kill all kinds of bacterial infections, right? So somebody gets an open wound, you're not in a place where you have access to an antibiotic. You can put this into a wound and it'll kill out the bacteria.
I didn't know that. That's good. Good to know. Wow. Little something, always getting a little something from the great minds. I love it. All right, David, thanks so much for all your information. This was a great share. I think people are getting a lot out of it, and very, very helpful. What do you have going forward? What's the latest coming up?
Well, so we recently launched on a totally different subject. We recently launched these aromatherapy mists, and I turned 60 this year. So past few years, I've been thinking about how to keep my testosterone levels elevated, how to balance out my hormones and do it naturally without drugs. So I invented these two products called Shine and Dream, and they're aromatherapy products. You simply spray them on your wrist and you inhale them. And my testosterone levels went from the mid 300s to just over 700 nanograms. Wow. Within a period of about 2 weeks of using this. Also improves the quality of sleep. Yep. Can help you lose weight and some other benefits. So that's the newest.
I'm definitely enjoying those. Aromatherapy is pretty amazing. Now, how did you get to aromatherapy? Because most people like myself, you think you ingest something, it's gonna be one of the better benefits. Some of the stuff I do now, I put it in the gum, so it goes in that way.
Yep.
But the patches have been very effective because the light wave technology is phenomenal. So what is it about the aroma? This is interesting.
Yeah, so actually, I had seen one clinical study. I didn't believe it at first,
Mm.
but I had been listening to some doctors talk about different ways to elevate testosterone, and they were talking about that truffle pigs will what they're really detecting is the testosterone in the truffles.
Hmm.
And so I found a research study on it, and I saw, yeah, there's these androgens that are in naturally occurring materials like pine pollen and truffles. And so as I got into this, I found out, okay, well, this is really making sense to me now, that when we're talking about hormones, they're in very, very small quantities, and that we can actually get enough by breathing them and it's called olfaction. But if we inhale these hormones off of these natural materials, we can in fact elevate our own hormones. And so I started to experiment with this and think about, okay, well, how can we do this safely? And then also, which hormones would we want to elevate and why? And then I started to do a search in the literature on which compounds might be complementary to one another, and then began to do some tests. And what we found out in our very first clinical study that we did with 15 people, both men and women, that with the men, most of them were getting very dramatic improvements, like as much as doubling their testosterone in as little as 3 days. That was 85% of the population. Their oxytocin levels were improving. And what that means is that oxytocin is actually going to reset the muscle fibers to a more youthful state. So when we look at our LifeWave product line, now we have products that will not only improve strength and stamina, but will also get the muscle fibers to actually become more youthful, improving the quality of the muscle tissue. So this can make people resistant to normal age-related sarcopenia.
Wow. Definitely pushing the envelope on a lot of stuff. So, I mean, your days back when you're helping the sub guys and then the Navy SEALs, and now you're helping all of humanity, technology, because you're just blowing those guys away. And they're like, I think at one point you just started blowing them away so much, they're like, we're going to push you away. I've seen that over my career. You're too good, and you're going to make us all look bad. So you're like, just go out and I'll do it myself then. And
That happened. That did happen to me at least once.
Yeah.
But the guys that work, the military contractors, the guys that work there, they're just some brilliant minds, and they do think out of the box. And I would say most people don't have any appreciation for how sophisticated the military industrial complex is in this country and how advanced we are. It's staggering.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was my discovery. For a long time being in the SEAL teams, we got exposed to some super high technology stuff, and I still see it because it's secretive stuff. You can't talk about it, but I still see it 40 years later starting to make its way out, like GPS. We were working on GPS stuff long time ago, and then it started coming out. Now it's on the phones. The bone phone stuff, we were using that like 40 years ago, and it's just now coming out. People have it for their ear pods and stuff like that, my wife just got one. I was like, wow, that sounds just as good as the way I remember like 40 years ago. That's good. So there's technologies definitely that they can push the envelope. Of course, they have to keep it secret to give us the edge, but eventually, because they keep pushing, they're like, oh, that's old school stuff. We can let that leak out there.
Yeah, and without saying very much is I would hope that some tech that is in the government does get released, because it could make an enormous difference in the quality of lives for people all over the world. So we just hope for that day.
That's right. You're definitely doing that, and I appreciate it. Everyone that's used the LifeWave and has listened to your information appreciates that as well. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Always a pleasure.